everyone. Welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. I'm your host, Juliana. Hey everyone. At Zone to Speak, I know how important it is to stay healthy, strong, and ready for every ride, workout, and adventure. That's why I'm sharing discounts on products I personally use and love. Each one designed to support your performance, recovery, and overall well-being. Whether you are a serious athlete or just trying to feel your best. And remember, every time you shop using these codes, you are directly supporting the podcast and helping me bring more great conversations to life. Psych Plus, their smart pump is a game changer. Light, compact, efficient, and perfect for keeping your tires road and gravel ready. It's also ideal for travel as you can skip the CO2 canisters. You can even change your tire pressure on the go when switching between surfaces. Get 10% off the smart pump and 5% everything else. 15% off down the road cycling gear, beautifully designed and performance-ready apparel. 15% off New Zest, clean, plant-based protein and essential nutrients to fuel your recovery and daily energy. 15% off Oleo's wellness shots, adaptogens, nootropics, and functional nutrients to support performance, focus, and recovery. I take Oleo's daily in the lead up to any of my races, and I have the pre-ride and recovery shots ready for the weekend's big training rides. If you're looking for a clean, effective boost, Oleo's is it. 10% off Cold Age. High-quality supplements, including multivitamins, collagen, creatine, and more. I take their women's fermented multivitamin and creatine daily. 10% off Loop ear plugs, ideal for travel, sleep, sensory recovery, or managing noise at races. 10% off Clearly Not Coffee, a caffeine alternative made with mushrooms, cocoa, maca, and rhodiola. I use it every day for smoother energy, sharper focus, and better hormone balance. 10 pounds off Heal, nutritionally complete, high-protein, plant-based meals for when you are on the go and need something quick, satisfying, and healthy. Also great to take bikepacking. 10 pounds off Shokz headphones, the safest way to listen while you train with open-ear technology that keeps you alert and aware on the road or trail. 35% off Frey Skincare. Skincare made for active people. I have used Frey for 10 years, designed to keep sweaty skin clear, fresh, and glowing. You will find all the partner links, discount codes, and instructions in the episode description. So go check them out and enjoy these perks. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome back to Zone to Speak, where we explore the human stories in cycling. Today's guest is someone who has carved out a truly original space in the cycling world, Chris Hall. You might know him from his YouTube channel, where he documents long rides and personal challenges with honesty and heart. Or maybe you have come across his Zero Lemon podcast and his creative brand, also called Zero Lemon, a space for those who take cycling seriously, but not themselves. Chris' journey is part endurance athlete, part storyteller, and part thoughtful creator. In this episode, I will get into how he built a unique voice on two wheels, how he captures his adventures and vulnerable moments, and how he has turned a love of riding into something that resonates far beyond the saddle. Chris, welcome to Zone 2.
Well, that was an introduction that I wasn't expecting and makes me sound really serious.
And you are not.
It just makes it sound like I know what I'm doing. In reality, I think I'm very good at going with the flow and blagging my way through life, which is basically what I've seemed to have done since I was, I don't know, in my early 20s, I think, to be honest with you.
Well, you do know how to capture the story and you stay really authentic. And I think you do know what you're doing, even if it comes organically with the flow.
It's funny, you mentioned the emotion thing when you were saying there. And like this last week that's just gone is a being totally frank, it's a really hard week for me. It's Men's Mental Health Awareness Week was the last week, and it's a hard week for me just dealing with some demons that I've had myself in my life, and I always find it that my emotions are very much on the limit on that of like last week, and I started watching The Last of Us. I've never seen it before, which is this ped,
I think I've seen this. The name is familiar.
yeah. So it used to be like a PlayStation game, and they've made it into a TV series.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. With Pedro
And,
Pascal. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and lots of people will have probably watched it. I think it's on 3 seasons now, and I've never watched it before. And I was watching it. I've started watching it over the last couple of days, and I was watching episode 3 of season 1, and it's got I think the guy's name is Nick Offerman, who is in Parks and Recreation, and he plays Ron Swanson in Parks and Recreation, who's like a grumpy man with a moustache. He'd be just an amazingly talented actor. And this whole episode is about him and him meeting his partner and them growing old together. And then I don't want to explain what happens. And the episode is an hour long, and I spent an hour crying my eyes out yesterday.
No.
And I was like, oh, the emotions are very much on the limit. They're very much on the surface. And I was sitting there just like, and I was like, why am I crying my eyes out? This is first of all, this is fantastic acting and television to make me feel that emotional about it. But I was just like, yeah, like I mean, I'm quite an emotional person anyway, and I don't have any issues with showing that at any point in my life. I never have done. But I was like, whoa, like I was proper sobbing last night watching that, and it felt very raw. I woke up this morning, took my dog for a big walk, and I was like, oh, I'm still a bit on that edge.
Touched by. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd really. The series has had loads of amazing reviews and stuff. I would really recommend watching it. It's a good one.
Okay. I'll check it out. Yeah, I have heard about it. And thanks for sharing. See, that's what I'm talking about. You are you. And like you just said, you're not afraid of sharing your emotions and being you. And I think that's a big part of the attraction that you're so popular, and the creation of your content.
It's a. I think it's important to try and be honest, and I think social media is, whether that's YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is. There's a lot of things that aren't honest on it, and that's also absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a space for everything, but for me, I've always felt that it's pretty important to be honest and just say things as they are. But there are obviously points where I have to have a headspace away from that, where I don't necessarily, how do I explain it? Things are more scheduled and done so that I don't have to think about it. And like recently, that's what's been going with my social media personally, is I've very much gone down the route of just scheduling things because I've got a lot going on external at the moment. So it's like, okay, things have to give, right? And there's an aspect with any form of social media and content creation anyway, where you need to have a break from that. It's still a job ultimately.
Yeah.
And so, like the last couple of weeks for me has just been about going, okay, cool. I need to pull myself out of that situation for a while, just schedule things, and then come back to it again when it feels appropriate and right. And I think that's actually a thing that a lot of people don't truly understand that they can do when it comes down to anything that's social media focused. Like you can remove yourself from that situation, keep things ticking along, and then go back into it when it's appropriate for you. Um, and it means that it also gives me a mental break from the fact of like I try to share as honestly and openly as possible about stuff going on in my life, but also I still have a private life, very much so, and that stays private intentionally. So
Yeah.
have to share everything. But for me, it's always been about sort of sharing, especially as I hate to say it now, probably coming up for a middle-aged man, which makes me feel terrible. That there's men are not very good at talking. Full stop. Not very good at it. having, I used to work as an architect, and I was pretty successful. I did, I had some amazing projects. I worked on stuff all around the world, but ultimately I was really, really, really depressed, on the cusp of suicidal depressed.
Wow.
That is the reason why I no longer work in that industry. And I can see those warning signs in me, and I've seen them in other people, very early warning signs. Not, there's obviously different levels and scales of this, but I've seen it in other people. And I hope, and I've always wanted to try and allow sharing things honestly to show that actually there's no weakness in vulnerability. There's actually a huge amount of strength in showing that you are vulnerable and open with yourself and with what's going on. And I've always hoped that by doing that, that helps someone else to be like, okay, maybe I should open that conversation again, or maybe I should reach out to that friend who's been a bit distant for a while. Because like the signs that there's so much incredible resources out there from many charities. I do a lot of work with Movember, so I always kind of champion them quite a lot. But there's so many resources out there which are about supporting people and helping encourage those conversations, which are really tricky conversations to have. And as guys, we are useless at doing that. And I don't really. There's a lot of studies into why they think it is, but I don't really know what the wrong or right answer to it is. But it's something that to me is, I'm very conscious of it from my own personal experiences, and I feel like if I can somehow help someone else in some way, then that's a positive thing to do. It's trying to find ways to use social media and any form of platform in a positive way to be able to help others, and that's to me is what we should be doing with it more than anything else. I'm not complaining about the fact that there's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit down a road or whatever rubbish it is. It should be used as a positive thing to help support other people, or just to be funny. Like, funny stuff's also great because it makes you laugh. So that's how I've always tried to use it, and I think that came from early experiences, as I say, regarding my own mental health, and then also, like, I think because when I was a kid, I grew up in the countryside. My parents split up when I was really young, so I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, basically, because my parents were both still working and quite full on. Spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and they ran an animal charity.
Wow.
So it was always like, the charity aspect always was definitely something that was drilled into me from them. It was about, like, as a kid, I'd like mow the lawn or something to help my grandparents out, and my granddad would be like, "Okay, here's £2 for mowing the lawn," but he'd always be like, "In reality, you need £1. You're a kid. That's 100 penny sweets."
Yes.
It's how he used to explain things to me. He's like, 100 penny sweets is a lot of penny sweets. And he says, like, "Okay, I'll give you £2, but I think we should take it would be like, I think we should take £1 of that and put it in the charity box." So which was for their charity. And they basically, there was an animal charity, and my nan sort of mainly ran it, and she had loads of sisters, and they all looked after different types of animals. So, like, my nan did cats. She had a sister that did dogs, a sister that did, like, farm animals, a sister that did, like, big animals like horses, donkeys, that kind of thing.
Wow.
And then
They
a sister,
diversify the charity.
yeah. And then one other sister did, like, reptiles and insects and stuff like
What?
that.
Wow.
So it was a tiny charity just run by all these, my nan and her sisters, but, like, they all looked after different animals. And so like, at one point I remember my nan having like 30 cats at her house.
Wow.
And they're all just, like, slightly mangled, not very, like, the kind of cats that no one else wants, but actually incredibly loving and quite friendly.
Aw.
All, like, quite often old. And I think because of that, having that as a child, and kind of having that very early on enforced into me that probably is the best lesson I've ever had from someone is about you don't have to like you don't always need everything. Like there's an aspect of like if you can give back in some way, shape, or form, it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter what it is. You should try and do something to better other people and to better because in hindsight, the selfish way is it betters yourself. It makes you feel better in yourself as well. Um,
It
and
is
as,
such a feel good.
yeah, totally, it brings you good endorphins by
Yeah.
giving back. And I think that was the best thing. At the time, it was really hard because I was a kid that didn't really see my parents very much. But being able to look back on it now, I owe my grandparents so much for that, and to have those lessons I learned from them.
That is a beautiful value to
Yeah,
have. And
and
I was going to
also,
ask, because I know you do a lot of your writing for charity. So you already answered my question of how this, how the charity work started, what
yeah,
brought you to follow all those causes and be speaker person for it.
I think I tend to do a lot for two charities as well. One is Pace Centre, which is a school for kids with cerebral palsy, and my connection to them is that my I've got a very good friend that has a kid there, and then the first cycling club I ever rode with, which would be like 2010, they were set up to fundraise for that charity because there's several people in that club who've got kids at Pace, um, and basically my friends whose son goes there, I went to go and visit the school, and I was so blown away by the amount of it's a tiny place, but the amount of how staff heavy it is for kids. So
Yeah.
it's motor based disorders. So think cerebral palsy is one example of a motor based disorder. There's many different options out there, but the the bit that's quite so my mate's son Charlie, like he's actually hilarious. He's pretty savage. He dared me to ride to Paris once after work and then take a photo under the Eiffel Tower holding a croissant. And I did it. I was like, there you go, mate. But yeah, he's pretty savage. His sort of cerebral palsy is quite minor, really. He has issues with sort of like controlling his arms and his legs, so he's quite often on
Okay.
crutches. Um, and but in contrast, it could be, and like he can speak. Like some kids who have cerebral palsy and other motor
Yeah.
disorders can't.
Have difficulties. Yeah.
Yeah, so they will speak using eye movement on a computer effectively, or sign language is another example. So, but I went and visited the first time I visited there, and I was so blown away by how staff heavy it is for a class might be 6 kids, and there might be 7 members of staff in that class because they need each child might need their own carer, plus then you have
Yeah.
a teacher, plus then you have support staff. So it's quite heavy, and I also have a nephew who is um, highly autistic and has sort of mild motor based disorder as well. So like there's a family connection as well as a friend connection to them. And a lot of the challenges quite early on were around the number 107 because originally Pace could only look after 107 kids. And it was easy to kind of go, what can I do on a bike? There's 107. There's lots of
Oh,
things.
I know where you're going now.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of things you can do with that.
Is that what drove the 107 rides in 107 days?
Yeah. So that was done as a fundraiser for Pace, and I did it. I can't even think when it was. It was quite a long time ago now, but it was 107k every day for 107 days, and I started it I think 4 days before my birthday, which was a silly decision, and my birthday's in December, so
Oh,
also a
it's
silly
cold.
decision.
Yeah.
It was really cold, but I was also still working full time. I was still working as an architect at that point, and I think it was like in the first week. The rule I set to myself was basically like I have to do the distance before midnight. That was the rule I set to myself, so I could do it after work effectively if I needed to. And I think it was probably like in the first week, it was like very, very. I think I finished at like 10 to midnight on one of the nights, and I was like, well, then if I didn't do it, that's the challenge. I failed it. In reality, I hadn't, but that was just the rule I set to myself, and I did manage to do it in that time frame, so it was fine. But I was really stubborn about wanting to start it on this particular day because I wanted to finish it the day before the Tour of Flanders,
Okay.
because I'd gone out there at that point most years for a few years. So I wanted to go out there, and the last day to be the Tour of Flanders Sportif, which is 200 and something kilometers, so a lot further. And then spend the day and then actually just watch the race with my mates and enjoy the day watching the race and like having fun and not not having to ride my bike. But the irony is that the 108th day, as I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, which was the normal, I got on my bike and I started riding it for about 10k, and I was like, "What the heck am I doing? I don't have to do it today." I was just like on
It
autopilot.
was autopilot. Wow.
And my mates, I was sharing a room with two of my mates, Ant and Francis, and I came back into the hotel room, and they were both awake, and they just sat there smiling at me. And this is like early hours of the morning, right? And I was like, "Guys, did you think about just stopping me?" And they were like, "Nope, we thought we'd let you
Of
do it."
course not.
Yeah, they were like, "We thought we'd let you just do it, and you can figure it out yourself." And I was like, "Great, well, that was appreciated." Um, but
That's
yeah,
funny.
doing that while working a full time job was really hard. I mean, a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, that doesn't sound too bad. The distance isn't that bad."
It is. It builds up, and you when you have to work, no way.
And I was sort of getting up at sort of 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, riding before work, then working a full day of work. And as working in architecture, quite often you end up working overtime, and you could be in the office easily until 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then try and finish up the distance afterwards. So it always start at the start of the week. I'd be doing like 60, 70k before work. Then I'd go out on my lunch break, try and do another like 10k, and then I'd try
Wow.
to finish it off after work. That would be the start of the week. That was going well. And
Wow.
then as it got later on in the week, say like Friday, it would mean I'd do like 30, 40k before work because I was tired. Another 10k at lunchtime, and then finish the distance off after work. But and then the weekend, I'd have a massive lie-in, try and catch up on sleep because I hadn't had a lot of sleep, and then ride. Normally, do the ride sort of like 11 o'clock, and quite often rode. So I lived in London at that point. I'd quite often ride from where I lived out into like Windsor, and then back.
Okay.
That was 110 kilometers from where I lived to Windsor and back, and it's flat, so it actually was quite good for it,
That's
really.
nice. Yeah.
But it was a challenge that like it was long, like 3.5 months basically of dealing with crap British weather. And yes, it's
Yeah, those are
milder.
the toughest months of the year: December, Jan, Feb, and
Yeah,
half of March.
yeah, exactly. And I was, I was, I don't think I realized it, but I was severely depressed after that challenge, which shouldn't have been that way. It shouldn't have been that way.
Why do you think it was
Spending so much time in the dark, being out in the dark, and then spending the daytime in an
locked
office with,
in? Yeah.
yeah, with very little natural light in it, and then not eating very well because I was so tired. So I would just eat, you know, I was eating a lot of takeaway food because it was easy. It was easy to do, or eating not good healthy food. And like I put on weight on that challenge as well. Like I put on like 5 kilos, which everyone,
Wow.
a lot of people were like, "How does that make any sense?" And it's
Yeah.
I was explained to it by a friend who's a nutritionist, and he was saying the problem is your body goes into survival mode.
Crisis mode. Yeah.
Where it's just like I need to hold on to everything. I need to hold on to everything I possibly can. Um, and like it dropped off pretty quickly afterwards, but it was the fact that I think during that challenge, like everything was just like survival. How do I survive this while trying to juggle working, while doing all this other stuff? How do I just survive through this? And ultimately, in hindsight, it's made an incredible story. It's probably made a lot of money for Pace as well. Like that's the important part, and it also probably put me kind of in the trajectory of doing what I now do. Um, so I owe it a lot, but it took a lot at the same time.
Yeah, I'm sure it was tough physically, and then you found out it was tough mentally, but in the long run, maybe it was a positive thing because it triggered this positive lifestyle change in your life.
It wasn't long after that challenge when I quit architecture. It was probably pretty close after that where I went into the office that I worked with, and the director that I had at the time, I wouldn't say we saw eye to eye very often, if that makes sense. We weren't the we got on, but we both I don't think we really liked each other. We got on because we worked together, and
Too, yeah.
yeah, and I remember going into the office and sitting down with him and basically turning around. And I said, like, look, if I don't quit this job, I don't know if I'm going to be here anymore. And I don't think he quite got what I meant. And then I looked at him and I was like, I'm being really serious. I was like, I don't think I'm going to be here anymore. And I think the penny dropped at that point. And then he turned around and was like, okay, well, I'm not going to let you quit. I'm going to make you redundant, make your role redundant. So
Nice.
therefore you can have a payout and therefore you've got some time to look after yourself and work out what you want to do next. And like I say, we didn't get on, but purely
That
for
was
that,
a nice gesture.
a really lovely gesture to have done. And he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that at all. And that changed my opinion of him massively. That actually, you actually are a good person. Who understands the situation that I'm currently in. But yeah, it was. I haven't worked in architecture since, not properly. It's a fascinating industry that's incredibly ruthless and not very, from my experiences, not very supportive of people who are struggling a bit. But I think that I would like to hope that has changed since I've left the industry, and I would believe it probably has. But it felt very much that there was a lot of people out there for themselves and kind of like, I guess, like quite content with going, oh, I'm going to do a one up on that person because it gets me further in my career and I don't care what happens to them. And unfortunately, that happened quite a lot in that industry. And I think, and I put it down to the fact that it's high stress, long working hours. There's a very old school mentality, which I don't agree with, which is quite backwards. And it's just, I think that it kind of, people had this perception of like, I was treated like that, so I can treat someone like that, which shouldn't be how it is. Um,
I'm surprised because I'm nodding my head because I'm relating. But what makes me surprised is because I would think like architecture would be more, it's creative people. And, of course, I'm just making assumptions like it's more of a creative environment because I come from finance world, which is very cutthroat as well.
yeah,
And I finally had my corporate freedom day, I call it, because I also was done. I couldn't take this anymore. Like, people will sell their moms to get ahead. They'll step above anyone if that furthers their career. And yeah, I had a moment I remember so clearly where my husband had a friend over staying with us for a few days. And someone with fresh eyes, and he pointed out, I think I was leaving for work, I don't know, 7ish a.m. And I just sighed. He was like, wow, that bad, huh? And then that clicked. That was it for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lead this life where, I'm like, ugh, going to the office. And yeah, so I totally relate. And I've been trying to find my path outside which I'm loving it. Of course, it's much less money, but it's also much less stress and living your truth. I created a podcast, which is not income at all, but I'm enjoying it so much. My creative side finally flourishing, and getting to talk to people like you. It's really amazing. So I completely relate to what you're saying.
The thing is money. There's a couple of old expressions that are so true, right? Money doesn't buy you happiness. That is so true. It can buy you stuff, but that means that or it can buy you things that might be perceived to bring you happiness, but it's not true happiness. It's materialistic happiness, right?
Yeah.
Um, you can't. True happiness. You should be able to. You should not need anything to force that. You should be able to find it in natural and free ways, right? Whether that is like this morning, I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Really, I'm not good in the mornings. I'm terrible in the morning. I'm terrible in the mornings. And what did I do this morning? I took my dog to a field and I threw a frisbee for him for an hour. And the true happiness that comes off that is my dog is having the best time of his life this morning. And that makes me happy. What did that cost me? Uh, Nothing. Literally nothing. Literally, I bought a frisbee for him 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it
Maybe a
was like,
pound for the frisbee. Yeah.
yeah, like there's a special dog one. There's a very special dog one. It's yellow. Dogs can see yellow.
Oh,
So,
nice. Okay. I didn't know that.
yeah, there's not. Their dogs are like partly colorblind. Uh,
Yeah.
they can see the color yellow, like it contrasts. Is they don't see it how we see yellow, but it's a contrasting color from the rest of the environment to them. So that's why he is obsessed with a yellow frisbee because he can see it. It's why they like tennis balls as well because they're yellow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know they only see a few colors, but not how we see it, like you said. But I forget what the colors, but now I'll
Yeah.
remember yellow.
And that is true happiness, is going and standing in a field chucking a frisbee for an hour for my dog who is having the best morning that I say of ever. I mean, we do it quite often, but like he's had a great start to his day. I've enjoyed it because I'm having fun throwing a frisbee for my dog, and he's now asleep in his bed snoring with his eyes rolled back in his head, so he looks great. I keep looking that way because that's where he is. He's in his bed.
Yeah, I figured.
And then and that's true happiness. It hasn't cost anything. It's just it's something that's natural. Like the sun was coming up, it was starting to warm up, there was like dew on the ground. We both got back and we're a bit dirty and a bit muddy and a bit wet and everything from all the dew on the ground, and like it was just a really nice, happy way to start a day. So like, yeah, I mean, same. I don't earn half as much as what I earned in architecture, and architecture is not a well-paid job. People perceive it's a well-paid job. It's not a well-paid job in the scale of design, unless you're at the very top. And but am I happy? I'm much more happier the majority of the time now compared to when I was working in architecture, where I was happy in the minority of the time, you know. So yes, I still have days where I am struggling, and I think everyone does, and I think that's also completely natural. But I'm now more at peace and happier more of the time by being lucky to do what I do and to see what I get to see and experience the things that I get to experience. I saw someone, can't remember who it was, but I saw a quote recently. What was like, I had to write it down because it really stuck with me. Let me find it. I wrote it on my phone, so it won't take a second. It really, I found it already. It stuck with me quite a lot, and the quote was just, "The goal is to die with memories, not dreams."
That's
And
powerful.
yeah,
Yeah.
and because you want to get to that point where whenever that end is, to be able to be like, yeah, I've really seen things, experienced things, and done things I can be proud of, and I've got stories and memories and moments I can take with me or I've been able to share in whatever way it is that's appropriate. But I've been able to. I've got nothing. I've got nothing that I've missed. That's sort of the ultimate goal, right? Is to kind of be at that.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Be at.
live a full life and a true to yourself.
Mm, mm, mm. And I
And I'm
think
so happy you get to share this, most of it. Of course, some things you have to keep private, but it's great that a lot of us can see this part of your journey and be inspired by, touched by, and maybe, with this inspiration, be able to also to make changes. Not everyone can quit their day job. Obviously, people have kids or some other responsibilities and you need some type of stability, but at least put yourself first in certain moments, find something you love, like walking the dog. Doesn't have to be riding a bike.
I think it's important to understand that one, it can be little steps to start with, right? But making those steps that go towards the direction of supporting yourself are really important. And I always think about it like, my one of my best mates is an incredibly successful YouTuber, right? And he quite early on into him doing YouTube, he was filming that 107 kilometers every day for 107 days challenge. It's funny talking to him about it because we spoke about it recently. He's like, "Oh yeah, I rode most of that," and I'm like, and he's in his mind he rode most of it, and I'm like, "Yeah, trust me, mate, you did not. You maybe rode a quarter, if that." But I feel incredibly lucky to have so many of these adventures documented by him, and that was probably the catalyst for me to start documenting more of it myself. Was because he had documented, like I've got them to look back on when I'm an old man and be like,
Yeah.
you know, that was freaking cool. I did that at one point. Like we rode across Australia together. To be able to look back on that and be like, me and one of my best mates cycled across Australia over a month, and it was the craziest month I think, one of the craziest months of my life. So it was just nuts, and we were doing massive days on the bike, like sunrise to sunset days, and I have that as a thing I can look back on. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be, out there on the internet for the rest of time, right? And that was quite a catalyst for me to go, do you know what? Actually, I would like to be in a position where there's things which obviously I don't do with him, and now he's moving abroad. So like, it's how can I what can I do that allows me to still be able to capture those memories and moments? And one, selfishly, they're for me to look back on when I'm old. Two, hopefully they're stories and things that help inspire other people to try something out. And that was when I started doing it a bit more. But like, I remember when he first started shoving a camera in my face, I was like, dude, I don't know. I'm so uncomfortable about it. But then you become so used to it because he would force it that it becomes second nature. And it meant that it was actually quite easy for me to start doing it myself. Or, I've got another very, very talented friend who is a videographer, a documentary videographer, who lives quite near me. And like, I will shout him out till the sun dies. It's Jack Haig. It's a legend. And I took him on his first ever bikepacking trip 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a thing. He loves the outdoors. He's a documentary person, makes documentaries, but he's also a wildlife photographer. So he loves being outdoors anyway.
Nice.
And
I'm sure he loved the bikepacking then.
well, it's debatable.
Maybe.
He's the guy that's helped film Badlands for 3 years,
Cool.
and he anyway he wanted to do some bikepacking stuff. He'd never done it before. And I was like, okay, I will reach out to some of the brands I work with to help you out with some good, like in my opinion, the best equipment out there. So I got him a very good price on a gravel bike. I got him a load of cycling kit, a helmet, some tail fin luggage, like everything that was literally what I use. And that was me kind of going to the brands I work with, being like, look, this guy's helped out a lot. Like, help him out a bit as well, because like he's helped document
Yeah.
some of this stuff. Like, can you help him out a bit? And they're all like, yeah, 100%. Completely fair enough. And we did an event that's called the Frontier 300, which is a coast to coast bikepacking route in
Nice.
Scotland. So it's on the border.
Wow.
You could do it in a day, 300k, or you could do it in 2 days, and it's 180 kilometers and then 120 kilometers. And you start on the west coast near Gatehouse of Fleet, which is like west, like is in Scotland, like the border point of Scotland, and then you ride. It's all gravel or cycle paths or very very quiet roads, and you ride to Kilda, which is where Dirty Reaver is held, which is like another big gravel event in the UK. And
I'm going to look that up. Sounds like something I want to do.
it's fantastic. It's a fantastic event. So it's 180k, and then the first day is definitely the harder of the 2 days, and then the second day is 120k and net downhill. They're still climbing in it, but it's net downhill. And then on the east coast, so it's west to east. The reason they do it west to east is you generally have a tailwind that way as well.
Nice.
So we drove up on the. What you do is you drive to the finish, then you get a coach to the start, and so
Okay.
your car's already at the finish basically.
Nice. Okay.
And then you get the coach to the start, and then I booked us like a room in above a pub before the start. But I said to Jack, I was like, "Oh, it's a 10k bonus ride to the start," and he was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, but it's fine. It's downhill. Kind of not. There's a hill in it." And so we ended up right. So we rode to the start. The start's at like 5 o'clock in the morning, so very early. So we were up at about 4, getting some food, getting dressed, leaving. It's half hour or so for that 10k, and got to the start and had a coffee because there was a coffee van at the start, so that was quite nice, and very good coffee as well. And then we rode that 100. So we ended up riding 192 kilometers on the first day. Now, Jack's biggest ride before this was 160 kilometers with about 2,000 meters of elevation on road. Yeah, that's his biggest.
Solid. That's a solid effort.
Yeah. Now, this ride was 192 kilometers with 3,500 meters of elevation, gravel mainly.
Yeah,
So
that's a
his
big.
biggest ride he's ever done.
Wow.
And he did brilliant. Like, it was so rewarding for me to have taken him on that journey and supported him through that journey. That's something he's never done before. And like I probably got as much out of it as he did, in all honesty. Because for me it was like I'm this guy has seen me suffering on events and stuff and has been there. He can't do anything because especially with Badlands and stuff, there's quite strict rules in terms of filming it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it gets classed as being supported. Like he's only allowed to be present with me for a couple of hours a day, and like the rest of the time it's all filmed from a distance, or it's like filmed with a drone, or the filming comes from me talking to like a GoPro basically. But he's seen me when I'm really struggling, like 200, 300, 400 kilometers into things, etc., etc. And for me, it was quite nice for him to have ridden it. To kind of, he said to me afterwards, like it was quite satisfying to understand what it's like to go through the highs and the lows. And he's like, I know it's not the same kind of distance, but to be able to experience and go through that as well is really cool. But for me to guide him through that and support him, like his biggest problem was he just wasn't eating and drinking enough. So like, and I'm always eating when I'm riding, and I'm just looking at him and being like, come on, eat, keep eating. And I think that probably got him through it. But there's 90 kilometers into the route, which was 100 kilometers for us because of the bonus 10k. There's a hiker bike section, which is like, I don't know, a kilometer long, maybe 30%.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, we were riding up to it, and I did this event last year, and the weather for the hiker bike was really bad. So I was buzzing because actually it was lovely blue skies when we got there, and I was like, oh, I could see all the views and stuff. I started going up it, and I looked back and I couldn't see Jack anywhere, and I was like, where is he? And so I stopped and waited for like 5-10 minutes, and he's there pushing the bike up much slower than me, and he was like, he said to me, you're like a mountain goat. How do you go so quick on a hiker bike? And I was like, I've done a few of them. That is literally it. I've done a few of them. I have a hiker bike experience. That I think the hiker bike was the bit that put the nail in the coffin, so to speak, for him, because he was toast after that. He really struggled.
Oh,
But
I hate the hike a bike when you like hit your shin on the pedal. I do that every time. It's
yeah,
like, ah,
I found one of the things I always try and position the cranks as far away from me as I can. So normally if I quite often push up on the drive side, and then I make sure the crank arm is at the back. So like,
me too, but somehow it finds its way back to the front and then bang.
but the other bit I've done is which I explained to Jack was like I think the biggest thing, because he was starting to really struggle with his back. I was like, swap sides, just swap
Yeah.
sides, go to the other side,
Yeah.
because then it balances out. And he was like,
It's just like carrying a bag.
yeah,
Put it on the other shoulder.
exactly. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, just swap, go to the other side of the bike, do that for a bit, and then if it hurts again, go to the other side, because that's what I just keep doing. And he was like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense. But it was really, there was some lovely photos. I put them up on Instagram the other day of when we crossed the finish line on the second day, and you can tell he is like, he's proper like, yeah, like proper pleased with himself. And like I like very intentionally sat up so he could roll forward and have that moment, because I thought that was really important, to let him cross the finish line and sort of let him, you know,
Take it all in. Yeah,
take it all in,
himself.
have that to himself, and then I'll be at then I'll cross the line after him and I'll give him a massive hug and everything. But I just thought it was really important, and there's these really lovely photos that a guy called Matt, I think, took and sent them to me, and it's Jack's like really like pleased with himself. I'm just smiling in the background like a Cheshire cat. Like it felt like some kind of proud dad.
Cute.
But I that's another thing about happiness. What's that cost me?
Yeah.
I've got to experience an adventure with a really good friend of mine who's never done something like that before, and it's made me really happy and proud to see him finish it. Like that's what it should be about. Like, and what's it cost me? A tank of fuel to get there, and the entry to the event, and food, and a bedroom in a pub for the night, which was £87, which is,
Yeah, but the price of sharing the experience
it's priceless.
and seeing your friend go through this experience and share this, priceless.
Totally.
Can put a price tag on it.
But also, it wasn't expensive. In reality,
Right.
it wasn't an expensive thing to do. It was, it's in the UK. I had to drive there. I had to drive back. Food and stuff I would be buying anyway because I need to eat. A bed for the night, not really expensive for the pair of us. Then we camped in Kilda for the middle night, and then it's that whole thing about, like, to me, is like happiness shouldn't be expensive and it shouldn't be materialistic, and there's nothing materialistic about that. We slept in freaking tents for a night. That's not materialistic at all. It's about as honest. The only way that could be more honest is if we didn't sleep in a tent and we just slept out in the stars, right? So like those kind of experiences are so much, they're priceless. You can't put a value on them. You can't at all. Even though they don't end up costing you much, you can't put a value on them.
And it goes back to that phrase you said that it's on your phone. You just created a memory now. That is a core memory. You're going to take it with you. It's
Totally.
no longer a dream.
Yeah. And that's something that we both have, me and Jack both have. Similarly with Australia, when I did that with Francis, like that's something that we talk about it. We did that in 2019, right? And we still talk about it. Whenever we see each other, we talk about something will come up from that. And we've done a lot of trips together as well, right? But that, for some reason, that particular one, there's something that comes up regularly on that one. I think because we spent so many hours riding bikes in Australia, where to be honest, there's not a lot to look at. As cool and as epic as it sounds, there is not a lot to look at in most of it. So we talk a lot. We talked a lot, and therefore we every time we don't see each other that often now because we live relatively far apart from each other. But whenever we do, something will come up. Like something will happen that will like jog a memory from Australia, and I have that with like several friends, and having those kind of moments where you can kind of reminisce on something that's happened is it's so valuable, so valuable.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also have, those trips with also my best is a YouTuber. And I also love to going back, sometimes like my brother was his visiting and I was like, oh, let's see the video from Rwanda. I'll show you how we went. It's so convenient and nice. And it's so cool to relive the memory. But I'm so happy, you had this experience and I mean, you were able to shift and find a new meaning and a new lifestyle and that you're doing well. And how did everything develop after that? You started creating some videos because now you have, I want to say, a little empire because you have Zero Lemon. I knew you would laugh, but I don't know how else to describe, but
I'm a media tycoon now. I'm like
yeah.
what's that? I don't want to say the horrible man who owns all the newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like a horrible man that owns newspapers.
No.
Zero Lemon it all started as a bit of a joke, actually. My other best mate said to me, so I got made redundant from a job. It was in like pandemic times. There's a lot of people got otherwise put on furlough in the UK, which meant you still had a job, but you basically didn't have to go to work. It's paid for by the government, or you
Oh,
lost
okay.
your job. I lost my job. I worked for a small company at that point, and my best mate said to me, "When life gives you lemons, tell life to get a life because lemons are a shit gift." Is what he said to me, and then he went, Please feel free to beep my expletive I'm about to say." He said, "Zero fucking lemons. You should start a business named that." And I said, "I don't think I could start a business named Zero fucking lemons, but I could call one Zero Lemon." And he was like, "Do it." And I said, "Well, what does it do?" And he's like, "Whatever you want it to do. Just do things that you think are fun." Um,
I
so
love that. Now that I understand the meaning,
yeah,
love it. Zero lemon.
yeah. And it all started as a joke from one of my mates, and he and the I did the podcast for a while, and the podcast was kind of like an excuse to have interesting conversations with people and just record it. That's how it started. And the podcast started because I was actually away with some friends in Spain on like cycling, and that we were away when the first lockdown started. We were in Spain.
Wow.
We were away in Calpe. We were staying in like a little apartment. It was there's five of us, and we were just like sitting in this apartment and the siren started going out, and it was like you had to stay indoors. It was literally the first lockdown in Europe,
Wow.
so we couldn't go anywhere, and we were all trying to get what they called them repatriation flights, which was basically to get home quickly.
Yeah.
And it was really scary. You look back on it and you're like, well, that was a pretty scary time. And so we weren't allowed to go out and ride anymore because no one really knew what was going on, and we weren't allowed to like leave the apartment unless we were getting some food and stuff like that, right? So I just said to one of my mates, "It's like, should we just record a podcast and just start recording, like record a couple of episodes? Like, why not?" And so we did. We just started chatting absolute rubbish, and that's how it started. Um, and I haven't recorded for quite a while, and that's not unintentionally. It's more because I've been focusing more on doing more the YouTube stuff, like, and it's impossible to do everything. Like,
Yeah.
something has to give, right? But I think in some way, shape, or form, a podcast will end up coming back later this year. I don't know if it will necessarily be the Zero Lemon one, but I had a very good chat with a very good friend of mine last week, and we were talking about bringing back a podcast of some form, which will be nice because he's got an actual like place where we can record it, and it'll actually be quite cool, I think. And then, but then the other side of 011 was always about just like designing things that I thought were cool, and then if people wanted to buy them and support it, great, that's amazing. Like it's never been about making any money. It's never made any money. In fact, it actually is lost money every single year. Um, but it's been a way of me doing some fun and things that I like. Like I've done quite a few jersey designs now, and I've done quite a couple of jersey designs for other people where they've been commissioned, which is quite cool. And I did a couple of different paint schemes on a few bikes, which we then raffled those bikes off for charity to raise some money for Movember and for Pace, and they were cool. And it just sits there as a thing in the background. I don't really know what it is. But I don't want to know what it is. It's just an excuse to do things, and a way that I can slap stickers on signs at the top of hills. So it doesn't. Yeah, 011 doesn't really. It's never been a thing where I want this to be my like a big thing, because it isn't, and it doesn't want to be, and it doesn't need to be, and I don't want it to be a massive thing that becomes like hugely, I don't know, turning over a profit or anything like that. I just want it to be fun. So all the stuff I've done has just been like fun little things. Like I try and do at least one jersey a year, and try and do a few other little bits and bobs here and there. Then the prints started originally a company I used to work for that sadly doesn't exist anymore, where I started just designing these prints based on routes and elevations and stuff. And then when that company closed down, the guy that started it was like, "Well, you can keep this your designs. You can keep doing them. It's not a problem with me," which is really kind of him to let me do.
Yeah.
And what I like about doing the prints is a lot. There's a lot of like ones that I've sort of done that are pre-done that people can purchase of like Sacalabra or certain rides and routes, and I have them as stock effectively. But the bit I really enjoy is when people order a custom one and you get told the story behind why they're doing it. That's the bit that's really nice. And then being able to create something that becomes a memory for them to remember something is really rewarding. Same thing,
Yeah.
not a monetary thing, really. It's something that gives me pleasure and happiness because I know it gives someone else pleasure and happiness. And I get to see and hear the story about that route and that ride. And, there's people like there's a woman who's bought, I think, five now for I think her partner or son. I'm not totally sure, and I've not asked because it's none of my business. But
Yeah.
she's been buying them for a male friend, a partner, family, son. I'm not sure. And every now and then she sends me a photo of them all. Like she bought one recently for him and sent me a photo of, I think there's five of them all on a wall, all custom prints, all done for different things that he's done. And that's really, seeing things like that is really nice, you know? It's
Yeah. You're a part of something big for someone.
yeah,
You
exactly. And
helped build that.
it's a
That's
real
really
honor
cool.
to be able to create those things for people to have those memories. And then like the jerseys, like in all honesty, a lot of the designs have come from where I've just been like mucking around with things in my head and ideas in my head and be like, oh, that looked quite cool on a jersey. And I've had this like when I worked in architecture, I had an obsession with like marble and stones and finishes. Loved finishes. I'm obsessed with finishes still. Like proper like finish snob. Like I like material. And I guess like a lot of the jerseys have this like element which was taken from marble and marbling. Um, I used
I
to go
like
to
that. They look good.
yeah, thank you. The last two I'm very very proud of. The they and like I I get a couple as like samples, get photos of them, and then they're just done as a pre-order because like I don't want to be sitting on loads of stock, and I can't afford to sit on loads of stock. But if it does it as a
Yeah.
pre-order, the amount that sell are the amount that sell, and that's it, and that's great. That's cool. But the bit that's really nice is when you see someone riding in it that I might not necessarily know, and that's happened a few times.
Really, that's cool. That's really cool.
And it's happened a few times, and then I'm like, yeah, that's freaking sick. That is like someone riding along and you're in a jersey you design. It just feels cool.
Yeah, yeah, it must be so cool to see your design out in the world live.
It's not. I like seeing it when it's not on me, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Because I
yeah,
know what it
yeah.
looks like on me, on all of them. I like seeing it on someone else to be. I think as well. Like I've always had this interest in how these kind of patterns come across on the shape of a person as well, because it's very everyone's such different shape sizes and everything like that. So it's really interesting to see. Um, yeah, like Zero Lemon was never, it never has been serious. I mean, it actually, I say one point it was a little bit serious because I was being commissioned for quite a few different projects, and I kind of stepped away from that because I was like, actually, this is getting a bit too serious for my liking. You know, I did a helmet design, I did some like installations for like a film production company and stuff like that. But it was all a bit, it sort of felt a little bit too serious that it meant that it could be something I don't like anymore. So I removed myself from that and just went back to allowing it to be fun.
Yeah, I see. I see how that can get, if it starts to have that pressure or feeling too much like a job and then it takes away the creative, the fun, the lightness of it, it's not worth it.
Totally, totally. You know, I'm in the lucky position that, you know, a good thing about not living in London is it's a lot cheaper to live out of London. And living in the Peak District is a huge amount cheaper than living in London. I lived in London for 12 years and I've lived in the Peaks now for 4 years, maybe five, can't remember. Um, and so I don't need a lot of money to be able to fund a lifestyle which is very rewarding, um, in the sense of experiences and being able to do things. I don't, the as long as I can, make sure the bills are paid and the dog can eat his food, that's great. It's all good. And so I don't need exactly that point. I don't need Zero Lemon to be a serious thing. Like it's, if any, doesn't make any money, but if it ever got to a point where it made a lot of money and it becomes too serious, I just close it down because it never should be. It shouldn't be. It should be fun. And I think that's, as I've got older, that's the thing that has kind of like changed in my mind, is about like, actually, as I said about that quote, is experiences are the thing that are the most valuable thing. You take them with you at the end of the day. You don't take money with you at the end of the day. Goes to the tax man.
Yeah, that's what I'm working towards too. Hopefully, I'll be in that place soon. Yeah, little by little.
Baby steps and it'll start to click. That's all it is.
And what's next for you? Any big adventures?
Yeah. What is next? I think the next thing that I will be at is Stone Circle, which is a gravel event down in Salisbury in the UK. It's a absolutely fantastic event. I did it last year. The organisers are some of the nicest people in the world, so I am more than happy to shout about them as good people. So that'll be fun. That's like a weekend of events and fun, and I'm going to be doing. I'm signed up for the longest route, but I don't know if I will do the longest route, and that's also fine. It doesn't matter. I see how I feel on the day, basically. But that's the next big day out, I would say. And then I'm currently working on a plan for a very big charity project, which would probably start next month.
Nice.
I haven't announced it intentionally because I'll announce it at the start of July, but I'm just trying to um, finalize everything until I'm kind of like good to go with it effectively, which is always the case with these kind of things. Like, yes, it will be a fundraiser for November, and it will probably take me about 28 days. So that's the scale of it effectively. But it's the idea is I'm just trying to make sure that everything's in place properly before I properly announce it, and I want people to come and be part of it effectively. And then after that, uh, back at Badlands again for a fifth year, which is a
Wow.
real honor to be able to say that. It is my favorite event.
It's so beautiful. I did the rally, and yeah, it's one of the most breathtaking places
It's
I've been to. It's just,
it's so beautifully brutal, is how I
yeah,
always think of
that's true. It's very challenging, very, very challenging route.
it. Mm.
Plus the heat and finding food and water.
I just, for me, it is so much more than the event. The organizers, and David. I kind of talk about David quite a lot as the main organizer of it. I would say, but he is a very good person doing very good things. He works in. I don't want to like get his job incorrect, but it is to do with like environmental climate stuff. And that event, people quite often only see the race side of it, right? But first thing, I think the best stories come from the people at the middle and the back of that event. The people that are racing it is an incredible how fast they can go, but actually I find it quite unrelatable. And I don't, maybe 5 6 years ago I related more to that person that was racing it, and now I probably relate more to people that are doing it for the experience, because I think the experience is so valuable in that event. Um, but the team behind that, they do so much more than just put on the race. They do a lot of work of community outreaching, like the Kamut Women's Rallies. There's the supporting the small towns and villages that are on the route that do actually are, to be honest, dying out, because young people move to the coast where there's more work opportunities, or to the bigger cities where there's more work opportunities, and they do a lot in helping to keep those towns and villages continuing and surviving and living and growing. And those towns and villages do so much for the event. And I've seen that, having done it over, the last several years now. Like, I've seen it from the first time, where you go into these small towns and like, what the heck? Why is there so many weird people in Lycra covered in mud and gravel and stuff? To now where they've got like banners and signs outside,
Welcome. Yeah.
welcome Badlanders, food available, drink available. It's grown so much, and you're seeing how that's helping the economy in these smaller towns and villages, which, to be frank, in Spain need it. They need that support. Um,
Yeah.
and then this is the first year that it will finish in Granada. It starts in Granada. This will be the first year that it finishes in Granada, and that really excites me, because the route, there's a few constants that have been on the route over the years, right? But I talk to David quite regularly, and he's like, "Oh, like last year they didn't go into one of the cities, and that was apparently the mayor of the city was quite upset about it, because he liked that it came there, and he was like, "Oh, the reason why they didn't go there was because the climb out of it is pretty savage. It's gravel.
Okay.
It's rough. I actually quite like it, but a lot of people didn't like it. It's a rough, gravelly climb, quite long. I like it because it's got beautiful switchbacks and the views are just incredible looking out to the coast. But the mayor was like, "We'll resurface it. We'll completely redo it." And David's like,
Wow.
he's like, "It's not about redoing it. It's about, it doesn't need to be tarmac, but like if it was less rough, it would be more of a better memory for people." So I believe that might have been done now.
Wow. Is that what, by Cabo de Gata?
No, so out of Almeria.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so the Cabo de Gata section, I believe, is still in it, as it is, and but like they pulled out Almeria in last year and missed it and went straight up north. So they kind of went further east, did Cabo de Gata, and then went further north up towards Tabernas, and then cut off.
Okay.
So,
Okay. But it's
so
nice now that it's a loop, because I always have a hard time, like when it's A to B, the logistics of you getting your stuff in your bike bag, if you have one, or finding another carbon box. Just
totally,
it's, yeah, a loop is always, I prefer a loop.
I do, and I also prefer events where someone's gone down, who's designed the route. I don't, as opposed to creating your own route, because someone has designed that route to tell a story for you and
Yeah.
to show you something. And that to me, like if you create these events where you create your own route, right, and you just have to visit checkpoints, fine. But like the chances that you are going to come across something that is not great or not an ideal situation to be in or whatever it is are pretty high, right? I think it's much nicer that if you do one where the route has been created, to be able to experience that journey that the organizer has wanted you to experience is so good.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, what I love is passing other cyclists.
Same.
It's really nice to be on the same route. You know, there are people behind you. There's, for me, there's like a safety feeling. Okay, there's still people behind me. I can keep going. You know, if it's nighttime or something, and also just nice. You know, like, oh, I see bikes. I'm gonna stop here.
Yeah,
There's people in
completely
this
agree with you.
cafe. Yeah,
It makes things feel there's an element of it feeling a bit safer, more of a community. You always end up finding someone you end up riding with for a little bit, right? And
yeah,
that helps a lot. And I think if I was to be doing an ultra for the first time, I would be doing an event where the route is set, definitely. And I think Badlands maybe, to be fair, it's not a bad first ultra event. It's not bad because there's enough points where you're coming across resupply, and you because the first ultra I did was Silk Road Mountain Race, right? So in comparison, Badlands is quite a good first ultra to do, in my opinion.
what?
Yeah, that was a
Wow.
choice. But I think if you were to do something like Badlands as a first event, it is tough. Of course it is, but it's totally doable in the time limit that they offer. It's totally
That's
doable.
true. That's
Um,
true. Yeah,
I think it's about 100 kilometers, just over 100K a day to finish in the time cut, which
yeah,
is, if you're training to do something like that, I think would be well within your ability. Um, but then, like, I always look at things like the Grand Guanches. I think they're fantastic events for people who want to start to look at doing these longer bikepacking things, because it's not really a race. It's basically a race to get a ferry. Then you
yeah.
ride
Don't
an
miss the
island,
ferry.
yeah, you ride an island, get a ferry, ride an island, get a ferry. And they are, my only downside to them is they do become quite expensive because of the cost of the ferries. But
Yeah.
they're really nice in the sense that you ride the island, you get to the ferry port, you end up sitting and chatting with loads of other people waiting for the ferry. You all get on, you'll sit on the ferry, you then ride the next island. And some people stop to sleep, some people carry on. Like I've done all of the different Grand Guanches, road, gravel, and mountain bike, and I will probably keep doing all of them because they're so
Wow.
good to do in the winter months when the weather in the UK is not ideal. Um,
Yeah, I haven't done that one. I really would like to do the gravel one, for an experience, obviously. But yeah, you're right. Those ferries are expensive.
yeah,
Yeah.
they add up. They add up. The gravel one, my biggest recommendation for the gravel one is to have some form of suspension on your bike if you can.
Really? So maybe I'll do the road one.
The road one is absolutely glorious. It's stunning. The road one's in January, so I'm definitely gonna do that one again. In order of how hard they are, in my opinion, having done all three of them, the road is the easiest. The mountain bike one's the hardest. Gravel one's kind of in the middle. The reason why I say some form of suspension would be good for the gravel one is because quite a bit of the surfaces are kind of washboardy, so
Mhm.
you end up just going and it just takes your toll, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
But like
does.
just something like a red shift stem or something that would help, just take a bit of it out. But the road one is stunning. Mountain bike one is pretty damn savage, but the places that one takes you on route are pretty spectacular. I did it. The mountain bike one is like end of November,
Okay.
start of December, and I did it last year. Um, and afterwards, I was like, "Before, I don't know if I'll do that again." And now I'm like, actually, do you know what? I probably would, because time of year wise, what else am I going to be doing around that time of the year in the UK? I'm probably going to end up spending a week, the majority of a week riding on a turbo trainer because the weather's
True.
probably not very good.
Yeah.
I can go and do an event like that, which is definitely challenging, but also quite fun, quite fun to do. Like I'm not an amazing mountain biker at all. Like some of the stuff was way too technical for me, but I learned a lot. My skills got better, and I really enjoyed the moments that I ended up riding with other people and the conversations I had with people that I met on the route. I met a guy who did the whole thing single speed. Yeah,
What? My jaw is dropping if you can't see me. Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah. I
insane.
know. I mean, it's amazing. Like and we chat probably every week now. So like, there's a lot. Like he was riding a hardtail, single speed hardtail, and absolutely crushing it. And then, I mean, he did really start to struggle after about, I think Tenerife was where
Yeah,
well,
that's the hilliest one, right?
Gran Canaria and Tenerife, he struggled, but he freaking did it, and it was awesome. So, like to me, like that they're great events at the the in the colder months in the northwestern Europe, I would say, so the UK or northern Europe, should we say, where you're guaranteed to have pretty good weather. And they do the mountain bike one is November, December, the road one is January, and the gravel one is March, I think. So,
I think so, yeah.
I guess he's woken up from
Cool.
his slumber.
What's his name?
Marshall,
Marshall. That's a great name.
come here. See if he'll come in.
Let's see, Marshall.
Come on, Marshall. You want to be on? You want to be on the podcast? Oh God, you're so heavy. Oh.
Oh, look at him. So cute. Yeah, he does look like a pointer. Yeah.
Find his other leg. There we go.
Hi, Marshall.
Marshall, what's
How
this?
do you feel about your frisbee session this morning? So cute.
He heard the word frisbee then and was like, "What?"
Oh, what? Did you say frisbee?
Yeah, he said frisbee. Frisbee. So this is this.
Oh,
There's someone
see,
walking
now he's
past the house.
talking.
Go on. Off you go. Oi. Welcome to the life of a dog that thinks he's bigger and scarier than he actually is.
I have one of those at home.
Yeah.
Chris, it's been so great to get to know you a little bit more. I'm so happy you came on the podcast. I actually thought we are going to talk more about bike rides and zero lemon, and this conversation really surprised me in a very good way.
Good.
You opening up and being so honest. I'm very happy and honored that you share, so honestly with me here on the podcast. I'm sure it's going to touch many people.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's life is more than riding bicycles, right? It's just that happens to be quite literally the vehicle that allows us to do so much that we get to do and to see what we get to see. But life is bigger than that, and I think sometimes it's important to remember that there's more out there than just riding your bike. Like it's 100% one of the most important things in my life. It's allowed me um, to understand my own mental health much better and to support myself much better. But it's also the vehicle that allows me to journey, to explore, to see the world, and ultimately it's probably allowed me to be way more open about things as well. Um, Bikes are great, but they're not everything, right? It's what I think people need to remember. They're not everything.
That's a good message. Yeah. Yeah. It's part of it, but not the main character.
Yeah, it's like trying to think of a great film example. It's like if you watched Iron Man. I love Iron Man. So really, it's now a classic. It was just Robert Downey Jr., right? And the relationship that he has with Peter Parker, Spider Man. The bike is Peter Parker, Spider Man. Great character, lovely, lovely person, but not the main character. Should be part of it. And yes, I am a Marvel geek, and I'm absolutely fine about that.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. And I can't wait to see what you're doing next, the big plan for November. And I'll be on the watch out and maybe we can chat again.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. And that's all for today's episode. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends.